May be active. Yep, that's the first time I've done that. So yeah, I got everything else set up except the microphone. So yeah, hello and welcome back. You didn't hear me the first time I said that. I normally have the mic already. Too distracted. It is Saturday, April 20th. I hope you can hear me okay. Yeah, normally everything's good to go, but I was busy queuing up a video, and you know, it's something I thought would be useful in relation to tonight's topic, which is finding your path. So I said I'd queue that up, and I had a look through it just a few minutes ago, and in doing that forgot to put the mic up. So yeah, let me know if you can hear me okay in the chat, but as far as I can see, everything's okay. Alright, good stuff. So, it's been a busy week. I got a couple more things for the gym outside. I got one for this chair. You probably can't see it, but there's like a mat behind me there. Thanks, Vinny, for the confirmation. All good. I got a PEMF mat. PEMF, which is pulsed electromagnetic frequency mat, and that's yeah, it's kind of like for grounding. It has infrared light in it as well, in our infrared heat, and it's good for the back, you know, sitting down all day long. Good for pain and general well-being. And I also got the red light therapy panel for the gym outside. So a full, it's like 4 foot high, near infrared and infrared panel for out there. It's good for, again, for recovery, pain, skin, hair, all of these things. So I've been using that for the last week. Yeah, good results. And then second to that, I got started on a guy called Brian Johnson, his blueprint protocol. I have some of his stuff here. Give you a look at one of them. You kind of, that's the essential capsules, but there's a whole stack that he's doing. I'll get into him another time, get into that stuff about him, but he's basically a rejuvenation person. He's a tech CEO that launched a few companies, Braintree, Venmo, OS Fund. I think he sold Braintree or Venmo, one of them, to PayPal for $800 million a few years ago. And now his life's focus is extending his life to live indefinitely to like age 200 or something like that. Interesting life's purpose. But some of the health protocol and things that he's doing, he's measuring himself very, very intently and looking at the results based on how he's living and these health changes he's making. So interesting stuff. I followed him for the last couple of years, and so I got the stack to kind of test it out and see. There's some protein powders in it, and well, they're not really just protein powders, they're health foods, and a couple of drinks, and then these supplements as well. So I'm trialing them out to see how they go. But yeah, been testing a couple of those things out. I've got my kefir again, this time from a local place, Super Value, just here in Dunshaughlin. Keep the gut healthy again. Yeah, so an interesting week, busy week all around. So with that, I wanted to jump on and talk about tonight's one, which was finding your path. And that's it. It's been a tricky one, I suppose. It's a tricky one for everybody, and it changes over time. So rather than me going on, first I wanted to play a video by a guy called Robert Greene. I mentioned a book of his before. I mentioned this one here, Robert Greene, The Concise 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. And he's a New York Times bestseller, and he's written a lot of other books as well. But I found, because I was going to do this one about finding your path in life, I popped that in and I found he had a similar video as well. Short enough, like 10 minutes or so. So I thought we'd take a look at that first and kind of discuss a few of the points and things that I've used and approaches I've used over the years, and some of the reasoning as to why I think I ended up where I did, what job I'm in, and some of the other things that I do, whether they be hobby or creative or other stuff that I still have that I do in parallel, keep me sane. So let's have a look at Robert Greene's video first of all, and we can talk about it as we go through, I think, as well. But there's definitely some interesting points. Let me see if I can find it. Here we go. Okay.
Hello everyone out there, my name is Robert Greene. The most important thing that you can discover or learn, which is what I call your life's task. So you're a detective looking in the interior of your childhood, of your early years, for those kinds of details. Hello everyone out there, my name is Robert Greene. I'm the author of several books. My first one is perhaps the most famous one, The 48 Laws of Power. I've also written The Art of Seduction, The 33 Strategies of War. I co-wrote a book with the rapper 50 Cent called The 50th Law. I did a book called Mastery, Another Laws of Human Nature. My most recent book, The Daily Laws. As you can tell, my books sort of center around subjects dealing with power and interpersonal relationships. I want to talk now about probably the most frequent question that I get from people who email me, which has to do with a subject in my 5th book, Mastery. And in that book, I discuss what I think is the most important element in your life, the most important thing that you can discover or learn, which is what I call your life's task. And the idea is simple. You were born as an individual, completely unique. The DNA that comprises who you are has never existed in the millions of years of evolution and will never exist in the future. It is completely who you are. Your experiences as you grow up from 1 year and on is unique in the world. Nobody ever in the past or future will have exactly your experiences, exactly your parents, etc. That marks you as an individual, completely unique. It's like a seed that's planted at your birth, right? And if you cultivate that seed, if you cultivate that uniqueness, you discover your life's task, and you have success and power, and money will come to you, and your life will be fulfilled. And if you don't, to any degree, if you completely fail in that, then you're going to have the opposite. You're going to have a life of a lot of suffering and unhappiness and dissatisfaction. But the question always arises, how do I find my life's task? Robert, I really have no idea. The first thing I say is, it all depends on the level of your desire, which is true for anything in life. If you really, really want something, if you really love it, if it's really important to you, you will find the energy, you will find the answer. But if you're only kind of half interested in it, if you're only kind of teased by the idea, if you're intrigued by it, it's not enough. You'll never have the energy to go through the search of discovering your life's task. So I tell you, you have to love this idea. You have to love that unique person in you as if it's like an actual human being that you love. you falling in love with it, you want them, you want to pursue it, it means a lot to you. You also have hate, because hate and anger is a very powerful emotion. You need to be motivated to this. What do you hate? You hate all the other influences in your life that are distracting you from your life's task. You hate your parents for telling you this is what you should go into. You don't hate your parents, but you hate them telling you that this is what you should go into. You need to become a lawyer, you need to become a doctor, you need to do this or this. Get rid of that. Get out of my life. Get that bullshit out of my head. You hate peers who are telling you what's cool, what's interesting. You hate all the crap on social media that's filling you with what trends are, with what other people are doing, with what other people are interested. That's your enemy. The enemy is what people are trying to tell you what you should be interested in. So if you're able to generate that kind of love and to see clearly the enemy, then the life's task can kind of flow to you in a kind of nice, fluid manner. Now, the other thing is, as I've told in many other talks before, I do a lot of consulting. And the main problem I have with people who come to me with issues, and it's not to fault them because we all have this problem, is they don't deal with specifics. They kind of deal in generalities. I don't know how to deal with people. I've got this partner and I don't know what's wrong with them. I don't know how to get my company and my group energized, etc. I'm trying to say, look, I need details. I need specifics. Don't focus on the big picture. Give me the details. Give me stories of what people are doing. Give me stories and details about what you've done and your frustration. I want to hear the little grains of sand, not the whole ocean of what's going on, right? People have a very hard time focusing on it. Well, it's the same thing with your life's task. It's not going to be Robert Greene wakes up and he's 9 years old and he goes, I want to be a writer. I'm going to write books. It doesn't work like that. So you're not going to be able to find that in your past. What you want are little details, little signs that reveal something essential. So if I look back at my own life, so I'm trying.
Before he gets into this part here, it's interesting, because I listened to it, but I had this in my mind beforehand, and I had a kind of a process a few years back thinking about how I would approach it, and it was writing a list of two lists. One list was about, on one side it was what you love doing, so you write a list of all the things you love doing, and then on the other side you write a list of things that you're naturally good at. Doesn't mean you absolutely, you don't necessarily have to love them, but you just seem to have an ability to do these things well. And it's an interesting exercise to do then, and find where those two lists intersect, where they cross over. So is there an intersection? Is there something between those two lists when you write down all the things that you love on one side and all the things that you can do that you have just a natural ability to do for whatever reason? Is there some point where they cross over or intersect? And he talks about 5 different types of intelligence. He mentions there are 5 areas of intelligence that are significant. And I remember numbers really standing out to me when I was younger. Just for whatever reason, I was very interested in numbers, and creativity, creating things, and just putting things together. But logic and music, sound, all of these things that had pattern, rhythm, things that I could recognize patterns in. So numbers, language as well, and creativity, but also then communication, just a love of learning, knowledge, language, numbers. But I remember numbers being one of the earliest things, and that really kind of spilled over into music, because I see a lot of repetition in music, a lot of pattern in music, and I think that's why I like it. There's a hypnotic element to it in that repetition in writing the music. I think maths, numbers, and music and creativity are all very interlinked. But he touches on some of that in a moment. Have a listen.
It sounds a bit narcissistic, but it's easy because I know my own experience. I don't know yours. When I was about 9-10 years old, I was in 4th grade. I remember very distinctly. I remember the day very distinctly. My teacher, Ms. Fiore, she put on this new game for us on the blackboard. She wrote on the blackboard the word carpenter. I still remember it vividly. And she said, how many words can you spell out of that word carpenter? Something went on in my brain going, whoa, what an exciting, fun game. You mean you can form words out of other words? That is so interesting. I remember the word that I first formed to this day was the word ant. I go, wow, you could form the word ant out of carpenter. Weird. I also remember I formed the word crap, and I don't think she was very happy about that. But anyway, I ended up winning the contest because I was so excited about it. And what that showed to me was I was fascinated with words, with just the look of words, the sound of words. And I was, something about it just excited me in a primal way that you can't explain. And then I remember, it's a very trivial, stupid story, but it revealed something about my relationship to language. I remember I wrote a short story shortly thereafter, an embarrassing short story that if ever got published would shame me to death. It was about the first humans that appeared on the planet and the vultures that are observing them. The story was written from the point of view of vultures. But here I was trying to generate stories from an early age. And then I remember I went to Hebrew school as a child, preparing for a bar mitzvah. And the letters, the Hebrew letters, I thought this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. They were like poetry. Learning the sounds of it was difficult enough, but the shape of those letters was so beautiful. So words, the look of words, the sound of words, the putting them together, the stories, they fascinated me, as did books. I often ask people, what is the thing that you want to do the most on your own? If you can close your door and get away from your parents, which all children have that desire for, what is it that you would do? And for me, whenever and this happened a lot, I would close that damn door and I would get out all my books and I would just read and read and read and read and read. These are the little signs.
You can see he has a lot of books behind him as well.
Robert, very young Robert, had a love of language. That writing was something that would be natural fit for him. And then, of course, I went on an adventure that I described in my TED Talk about how I ended up writing the kind of books that I write. But that gives you an idea of a little bit of the process. It's a book that I love and I highly recommend called The Frames of Intelligence by Howard Gardner. And basically, the idea is there are 5 forms of intelligence that he kind of signals in his book. And he says that everybody has a kind of tendency in their brain towards that kind of intelligence. And just very briefly, there's words and linguistics, like I mentioned for me. There's music and musical pattern, which is an obsession with sounds for their own sake, and melody and harmony and all these other things. There's mathematics and logic, which is numbers and the ordering of things in logical fashion. There's spatial intelligence, which is something I failed miserably when I was a child, which is actually looking at images and figuring out how to manipulate them in your brain, something that Nikola Tesla was probably the greatest genius at. People who end up in engineering or who are visual artists often have that. And finally, there's kinetic intelligence, which is the body, which is, just basically the love of moving your body and having an awareness of it. I would add another one, which is social intelligence, the love of getting along with people, of empathizing with them, understanding their world. The idea is that your brain has a natural inclination. Just look at it as kind of going down a hill, and that your thoughts and ideas incline in that direction. They incline towards words, towards sounds and music, towards spatial organization, towards logical ordering of things, towards moving your body, towards people. Whatever. There might be even other grades of this or whatever. Okay? And it's not like I want to be a mathematician when you're 6 years old, or I'm going to become a physicist. It's these little things that reveal that you have this kind of inclination, like I had towards words. And I ask people to kind of dig inside themselves and to find little stories when you were a child of those particular moments that will reveal some kind of excitement that you had in relation to something that might seem trivial. There was the story of Steve Jobs when he was 6 years old and his father was taking him through the streets of Sunnyvale, California, and he passed a store of equipment of like cameras, stereos, etc. And his eyes got wide open. Wow, just the beauty of the objects, just the metal, the components, the shininess, how they were designed. He just was fascinated with them. A very trivial moment in his life, something that was kind of just glossed over in his biographies, but for me, revealed one of these things that I'm talking about. So you're a detective looking in the interior of your childhood, of your early years, for those kinds of details. People will say, well, Robert, I don't have anything like that. I'm sorry, I'm lost. I can't remember anything like that. They exist. You're just not looking enough. You're not spending the time. You don't have that desire for reaching it. You're not writing every day in a notebook about what they could be. You're not looking hard enough. They are there. There are moments where you felt so excited by something you could barely control it, and there was a kind of a pleasure in it. And so even if, let's say it was music that excited you, even if you had to practice the piano day by day, a rather boring task, you found practice actually kind of fun. These are signs of what I call your life's task. So that's the process that you want to go through. And in my book, Mastery, in chapter 1, I give you more details about how to look for it. But once you discover it, it's like gold, and everything will open up for you. Hopefully, if you're young, if you're in that golden range of 18 to 25, and you're kind of searching, you will go through this process in a deep way, and you will find what that is, right? If you're older, the process is a little different, a little more difficult, but still very important. And the idea is, once discovered, you're going to have some adventure, you're going to explore. All right, I want to be a writer. Oh, okay, I want to get into music. Oh, I want to start my own business. You're not going to be so tunnel vision and just go into one job, into one thing. You're going to experiment. You're going to have some fun. You're going to have some adventures. You might travel. You might do things, but you're always kind of focused in that general direction. If you're a writer, you're reading books, right? Et cetera, et cetera. If you're an entrepreneur, you're starting little businesses here and you're learning about them. By the time you're 30, you've tried 4 or 5 different things, and now you're ready for some kind of creative explosion, right? But this is the key thing in your life. And it's once you discover it, everything else will open up for you. So just learn the lesson of the most important thing that you can do in your life is to know who you are, really, to sum this all up in simply. To know what makes you different, what makes you unique, what you love that's different from what other people love, right? And I tell people when you're older, continually create lists of things you hate and things you love, and look through them and analyze them and go, is this because what other people are telling me to hate and what other people are telling me to love, or does it come truly from within? So this process of finding your life's task is not just about your career, it's also about your mental health, about discovering who you are, what makes you unique, so you can become acquainted with your own desires, your own impulses, and not so controlled by what other people are doing and thinking.
Yeah, very interesting. I like Robert Greene. He makes a lot of great points. Great writer. As I said, he's a New York Times bestseller. Thinking or reflecting on that as he's going through it just reminds me of, for myself, music was kind of the first thing that I really loved. Like you can see, I've got guitars and a piano and stuff behind me. So I learned to play the piano first around starting age 9. But I was interested from the time I could think, and guitar I learned later. And then movies kind of were a fascination and always have been, the characters and that creative side. But something from an early age, even though they're the things that I loved, something that I was just naturally able to do, it seemed just without any effort, I was able to understand technology. Like whether we get a new VCR video recorder into the house, or a new television, anything that had a manual that had to be read, some sort of technology. There weren't mobile phones back at that age in the 80s, but whether it was a computer, when we did get a couple of computers, video games, you know, any kind of hardware, technology, something that had to be configured, something that I had to read the manual, understand how it was set up. I just had a natural, and I always have had a natural ability to do that. People will say, do you know how to do this, fix something? I say, I don't know, I'll have to see it. And then they hand it to me, and I go through this process in my head of kind of, I suppose it's troubleshooting now. That's what it is, but it's just a logical way that I follow things and go through, and it makes sense to me. Whereas other people say it's gibberish, it's gobbledygook. It doesn't inspire them to want to look through any of that, and they get lost in it. But that was something. It wasn't necessarily that I was absolutely in love with technology. I didn't really think about it that way. It was music and movies that I loved, but technology was just something I could do easily, and still can, and it's always been like that for me. God only knows why, but it seemed logical. And I think that kind of goes to the 5 fields of intelligence that he was talking about there. Logic, numbers and logic being one of them. And I just found all of that very, very logical. All of the configurations, the setup, and nowadays looking at software and how things are written. And when I was a sound engineer, it was very similar. Signal flow in a studio, how things operated, the sound theory and music. There's a lot of mathematics involved in both sound, visual, spatial awareness, and technology. For me, it kind of is all interlinked, and the language, is just layered over the top of how to kind of communicate that between everybody. But technology for me was I would say the easy one. It wasn't something I had to try at. It was just there. Music, even though I loved it and learned to play instruments, I still had to practice at it. And I'm definitely no gifted musician or anything like that, but I do enjoy it. I love playing. I love recording stuff, writing songs. That creative thing, I think, is cathartic, and it's good for your mental health to create stuff. So yeah, I think the interlink or the overlap then on my list, things that you love, creating things. So whether it be visual or music, recording, using a camera, microphones, all this technology, and putting it together to make videos like this, where I can talk about things like technology, health, and physics, and social interaction. All of this stuff, it kind of ties it together. And this is again a creative outlet for me. I did run a recording studio years ago for 10 years in my 20s, and all the technology that was in there, I set it up myself. The computer, I rebuilt it from scratch. I ended up having to replace motherboards and parts. This is all before I worked in IT. It's just something I knew how to do. And whatever I didn't know, you find out. That's the basics of it. If you had that type of brain, to me, that's an engineer's brain. You're a tinkerer. You have to pull things apart, figure out how they work. You end up breaking stuff just to put it back together. In a way, people always joke about that, but I didn't break stuff a lot. I would press the button. What does this do? If you're one of those people, what's this do? And then that's kind of, to me, like an engineer's mind. Now, kids are curious by nature, but I was always interested in what does this do and how does it work, and if I take it apart, what's inside. And that, to me, was a good indication that I may end up in this field, technology, in some way. But the creative side of it as well, the love will always come back into it. And they say the person you were up to age at 7 years of age is the person that you're always going to be, or at least that's the person you'll look to get back to being, after you go through all of the middle years in life. So yeah, for me, technology and creativity are the two things, and marrying them together in any way that I can is usually beneficial, and it makes things much more fun. So I would encourage, have a look at Robert Greene's books as well, and the other book that he mentioned. I'll link that video from Robert Greene in the description after this. But what I was saying earlier on about creating your lists. So again, first list is what all the things that you love doing, whatever that may be. For me, again, it was creating art. And that's a simplest way to say it. Creating art, and art encompasses, whether it be, music, written, pictures, drawing, whatever. Creating art of all kinds. What you're naturally good at. And for me, I wrote solving technical problems. So technology. And then you have to figure out if it's career path that you're thinking about. It would be really great if you can marry the two. So what can you work in? What can you be paid for? Or what's of value to the marketplace where the things that you're passionate about meet your natural abilities? And it's trying to look at those and understand if there's a place where they meet and what makes sense. It's not an easy exercise. You have to give it some time and some thought, and it may change throughout the years, as things tend to do in different decades of your life. But it's a good and it's a valid and worthwhile exercise to do. And you can add another one to that, is then what does the world need? So that's what, again, what's valuable to the marketplace. So 4 points. What do you love doing? Write that list. What are you naturally good at? You look for the intersection between those two lists. What can you be paid for out of those intersections that will be beneficial to you? What would it make your life easier if it was something that you'd be happy to work at or do or start a company or career, and that again provides value to the marketplace? And that's another way of wording it, is then what does the world need in relation to those things? Is there something that you can provide that some people do that you might think you can do it better? So it's something that you can probably write those lists out in a few minutes, but making sense of them and finding the intersection and thinking about what you want to do then after that, and putting a plan in place, that's going to take some more time. That's a little bit harder, and you'll probably come up with something. For me, it sounds like working in a digital media or software company that enables creatives to do their job or has a creative element to it would be good for me, and that's kind of what I do already. So work in a software company that enables creatives, and I get to be creative. Writing software and building tools is a creative thing, and then I have my own creative pursuits outside of this as well, like this channel, so I can get my thoughts out, and playing guitar and piano, making things. So I think that's where you have to start if you're at a point in your life where you're not sure, or you're at an early part of your life where you're thinking about the future, or you're in school. You're thinking about when you become an adult, what are you going to do in college? Where are you going to go? It's good to start putting these things down on paper now, paying attention to them, as Robert Greene said, and trying to understand where your natural capabilities and your passions lie, and do they meet somewhere in the middle, and is that intersection something that you can have a career in or want to have a career in, or does it spawn a further idea to create a company in that area? Is it something that isn't there that you want to start for yourself, or be the first? That's always a way. So I think the younger you are, the more risk you can take. When you don't have a family, you don't have a lot of bills, you don't have a lot of responsibilities, you can think about these things and you can try things out, and you can be a little bit more adventurous and exploratory. And then as you get older and things become more entrenched in certain areas in your life and ingrained and set up and rigid because you have commitments, well, then you have to, it's not all about, they say, I remember hearing what Will Smith say, don't have a plan B because it distracts from plan A. Well, that's fine if you can do that from an early age and go for plan A, and you know what it is, and you can go all in, and you catch the breaks. You put in the hard work. If you've got that kind of work ethic from a young age and you can catch the breaks, well then plan A, go for it. But then as life goes on, if you haven't got those breaks going through and you've had to make some alterations and You know, maybe you have a family, things of you know, life progresses, and you have to adapt. So you adapt to life and you put things in place. You may work in a different career, but if you're in a particular career that you don't love, you can change it. And I've changed my career over the years a few times. Not too many times, but a few times, enough to find the career that I love, which is the career that I have now. And I still get to do creative things as well. So it's not a straight path for everybody. Some of the lucky ones that you hear about, on the internet, like Will Smith, these guys, they're outliers. And outliers tend to tell you the fantastic stories that happen to them. And, those stories become famous. But for every outlier and every famous person, there's a not famous person who had a different route and that went in 20 different directions and had a plan A, B, C, D, E, and F. And it turned out plan H was the one that worked in the end, and they didn't realize that was actually what they needed. So, while it's great to hear these stories and listen to the motivational videos, which I do, you have to take them with a pinch of salt and apply it to your own life. Don't take what somebody else has said, what somebody else says as the absolute gospel for you. Take what you need from it. Take what resonates with you from it and apply it to your understanding of things. You don't have to be, influenced by dogma. You can change things. You can question pretty much everything. They say don't break the law, but break the rules. Question the rules. You can even question laws, but then there's a process for changing them that you have to go through. But in life, Arnold Schwarzenegger, I remember him saying, don't break the law, but you can definitely break the rules and bend the rules and try different things in your life, because I suppose it doesn't really matter. At any age you can change. At any age you can decide that, okay, tomorrow I'm going to go all in a different direction, and you can do that. So it just depends what you want, but defining clearly, writing it down, these things, like what you have a natural gift for, natural abilities in, versus the things that you absolutely love. Sometimes the thing that you absolutely love, if you want to make a career of it, it might pay nothing. I built a recording studio and tried to run that in Ireland for 10 years when there were already lots of recording studios and not enough of a music industry. So it wasn't as financially viable as I might have hoped, but I still enjoyed it. I still learned a lot from it. And, eventually then I knew I was just naturally good at technology, and I decided to go into that natural fit of a career about 10 years ago now. Even though I'd been kind of doing it all my life. People would just bring stuff to me and say, how do I fix this, and how do you work this? So it wasn't a surprise when I went into IT or technology. It was just a natural fit. So plans change, things change, and full circle, here I am back making videos, adding with microphones again, and in spare time making music, which I'm probably going to start making some more music and putting it out there soon enough. But it's for my own fun. You get to do these things, but now I have a structure in place from my family, myself. We have our home, our base. We have everything set up that we can explore then the other avenues of life and areas that we want to enjoy, like mostly creative pursuits. We're a creative family. But for your path in life and your life's purpose, it's something you're going to have to spend a bit of time on. But it starts with writing the list, starts with putting it down on paper, and then thinking about, like Robert said, the things that from an early age just popped out. Maybe you remember them from school, certain areas. I remember in school very distinctly that we had to they tell you to memorize the times tables, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, or that is, go through them. You get the book of times tables, and I immediately just memorized the entire thing. I brought it home and I just went through it over and over and over again until I knew every single one off by heart without thinking. It was just instinctive. I knew it at that stage without question, and I still do to this day. And we did some maths competitions at school, and it was like, again, the principal was there, and he'd ask questions, multiplication, division, long division, subtraction, all of this, and just do it over and over. And there was this, myself and one other guy, his name was Paul Doyle. If he's out there, Paul was a very smart guy, and we'd be left till the end, and it'd go on and on and on, and finally one of us would miss one or get one around, and the other person would win. So that was just natural. And then reading and language, there was 2 or 3 of us that had reading years. I think we were 7 or 8. We had 15-year-old reading ages and stuff like this. But there were natural things like that. On my own, I used to go home then and just make stuff that I wasn't even asked to do. Like, I'd make a project about the animal kingdom, and the presentation of it to me was everything. So I got a roll of wallpaper like 10-15 foot long, and we had these encyclopedias of the animal kingdom. So I wrote out lots of facts and drew pictures on, like, I think about 8 different pages, and I spaced them all the way down this big huge scroll and brought it into school for no reason. I wasn't asked to do it, and we ended up having it paraded around the entire school to show off to all the classes. Now, I'm sure a lot of people thought, look at this bloody swat gobshite, he wasn't even asked to do it, and here he is doing this stuff. But I just had an interest in doing it, and I went into all the plays, every single play that was ever on. I looked to be the lead, and I was the lead in all of these plays. So I just had that interest in all that creative side of things. But numbers and logic and technology and they were just something that it wasn't like I had to try at them. They were just there, and that's where I ended up. And I know a friend of mine, Vinny, is saying the same thing about that with numbers and all. And yeah, he works in the same industry as me. So there's definitely a link to those 5 areas of intelligence. And he does say social intelligence as well. He was adding another one on there. But I suppose once you've written your lists out, have a look back in the video when I put it into the link. I think the book he mentioned, I can't remember the author's name, but it's in the middle of that video. It might be something interesting to look at. Perhaps I might get that book and try to really understand the personality type that you have. I've done a few exercise lists like this over the years in various companies that I've worked in and online to find out your personality type. And I can't. There's one called if I can remember what the test is called. I think it's Myers-Briggs personality test. It's very Myers-Briggs. Yeah, it is. And I can probably find the results to see which one I was. This is something, if you're really curious about yourself and your career, do the Myers-Briggs test online. Yeah, I think I was like ENTP or something like this. Or INTP. Oh, ENTP. Something along those lines. And it's really interesting. It tells you and gives you recommendations about your personality type and what in every area of it, what it means. I think there's a book called 16 Personalities, or is it a website called that? Here it is. I did this 9 years ago. Your test results and more. Yeah, ENTP. I think that's the one that I was. And then there's INTP, INTJ, and FJ. So the 16 personality types are, let's look them up. Myers. Has anyone else done this? The Myers-Briggs test? Here's a little graphic I can pull up quickly. So Myers-Briggs type indicator, 16 personalities. They have words that go along with them. So ENTP is the debater. Smart and curious thinkers who cannot resist an intellectual challenge. I think that's my one. So that's called the debater. There's the architect, there's another one, INTJ. The logician, INTP. These are the analysts type. So I fall into the type, like the heading of analysts. Then there's diplomats, sentinels, explorers. I think there's a lot of people will be an overlap, but if you do this test, do the 16 16personalities.com free personality test. Just type in Myers-Briggs 16 personalities and there's a test there, and you can go through it and find out which personality type you are. And this is used for, you know, career placement and stuff like this. It's not some fluffy zodiac based type thing. It's actually based on a scientific approach to finding a person's personality so they can be more accurately placed in career pathing and you know, areas of work in life, or anything that you want to do specifically in all of those areas that I mentioned. But very interesting to do. I did it 10 years ago. Perhaps I'll have to do it again. I think it always turned out the same for me, ENTP. I see a more recent result as well. Let me see, was there... I'm pretty sure it was the same. ENTP. Your results. Oh, I did it in 2019 as well. What does it call it? Yeah, it calls ENTP-T. So there are some variants. So the role is the analyst, and then strategy is social engagement. -T, individual traits: extroverted 57%, intuitive 81%, thinking 54%, prospecting 57%, and turbulent is the variant at the end. Turbulent 76%. And if you click into it, it goes in and tells you like a ton about what that means. Funny enough, it does say breaking the rules in one of the headings for me. Follow the path of the unsafe, independent thinker. Expose your ideas to the dangers of controversy. ENTPs are known for their rebellious streak. For this personality type, no belief is too sacred to be questioned. No idea is too fundamental to be scrutinized. No rule is too important to be broken, or at least thoroughly tested. This may make ENTP personality seem overly cavalier or defiant, but at their core, their innate tendency to test boundaries has more to do with their desire for innovation and change. As they see it, most people are too ready to do as they are told and blindly conform to social norms, pressures, and standards. ENTP personalities enjoy the mental exercise of questioning the prevailing mode of thought, and they take a certain pleasure in uncovering the value of underdogs and outliers. Their active mind can't help but rethink the things that everyone else takes for granted and pushes them in a clever new direction, or in clever new directions. And then, obviously, this is one thing I did afterwards. Then I googled famous ENTP personalities. I think I got a list of famous ENTPs. That's, you know, it's fun to do afterwards to see who you might identify with. So who? Oh, right. They tend to just give you celebrities, and I mean, that's fair enough. So, a list of ENTP actors and filmmakers. Alfred Hitchcock. Who do I recognize? Ashton Kutcher, John Candy, John Cleese, Martin Scorsese, Rowan Atkinson, Sacha Baron Cohen, Tom Hanks. I'm just going to call out names I do recognize. Hugh Grant. This is in the actor section. Danny DeVito. Like Danny DeVito. Jeff Goldblum. Paul Rudd. Funny, my wife said I remind her of Paul Rudd, the guy from Friends and Ant-Man. Val Kilmer. Vince Vaughn. Zach Galifianakis. He's funny. Somebody did say that to me about him before. You remind me of that guy, Alan. His name was Alan in The Hangover. Who else? Ryan Reynolds is an ENTP. Yeah, I like Ryan Reynolds. Alexander Skarsgård. And Peter Dinklage, the guy of Game of Thrones. Musicians. ENTP musicians. This should be interesting. So Dave Matthews Band, Harry Connick Jr., Tom Waits, Weird Al Yankovic, another Al. Azalea Banks. Who else do I recognize? Ludacris. Writers. Do I recognize any of the writers? Socrates, Voltaire, Benjamin Franklin, George Bernard Shaw. Marilyn Vosavant, David Hume, Mark Twain, Dr. Seuss, Charles Dickens. ENTP comedians. You know, you'll have fun with this, but it might give you some indication or some inspiration, or both. Comedians that are ENTP like me: Bill Hicks, Bill Maher, Jon Stewart, Sarah Silverman, Ed Byrne. I don't recognize a ton of them. I think they're all American. ENTP leaders: Alexander the Great. Okay. Henry Kissinger, Donald Tusk. Other interesting ENTPs: Mark Cuban, Thomas Edison, Leonardo da Vinci, Babe Ruth. Leonardo da Vinci was always one of the most fascinating people to me, and the work that he did, and how he visualized and drew things, and his inventions, his engineer mindset. I think when I was young, he was the most interesting person I'd ever heard of or come across. And I actually didn't know until this point. I've never seen his name, or I can't remember seeing his name listed against the same personality type, which would explain why he and I have so many crossover areas of interest. That seems to be a common thing. And then they have fictional characters that would be, I don't know the fictional character. I think they've only got 2. Oh no, they have more. Funnily enough, one of them is the Joker, and another one is Chandler Bing from Friends. No, Matthew Perry. God bless him. Yeah, so oh, I've got more. Okay. Do I know any of these? Willy Wonka, Jack Sparrow from Pirates of the Caribbean, ENTP Disney characters: Aladdin, Simba, Robin Hood, Alice in Wonderland. ENTP fantasy movie characters: R2-D2, Tony Stark, Iron Man. There he is over my shoulder there. Tyrion Lannister, Game of Thrones. Q from Star Trek. You can't see above my head there, but Jean-Luc Picard from Star Trek is in his Next Generation outfit. Above the frame, you can't see. Off shot. Yeah, so that's some stuff on ENTPs, and you can find your own. So go ahead and look that up for the personality types. Very interesting, and it might just give you some, again, bit of inspiration or an indication of where you could go and what you could do, the areas that you should be or could focus on, and give you some insight then into people that have similar personality types throughout history. And you know, those little details can inspire you to take something on that maybe you didn't think you'd be capable of taking on, but you can see then what people with your personality type, based on this scientific principle of analysis and measurement of a person's aptitude and personality, or what they're likely to be and achieve in life, can do. You know, looking through that can give you that inspiration, or be indicative of where you should focus or could focus. It's all optional, of course, but you know, knowledge is power, and data is information. Data and information are the way to get there. You need to have the information available first, and first you need to do some exercises. So start with writing your lists, and then maybe do the Myers-Briggs personality test. I'll link that down below as well after this, and you know, try it out. Let me know how it goes for you. I'd be interested to see. And Vinny, I want to hear what comes back for you. You might be INTP or something like that, INTJ. But anyone that I know, let me know directly. Send me a text or reach out, or add a comment to the video. Tell me what personality type you came back on with the Myers-Briggs personality test, and see that it spark anything in you. Give you an idea of where you could go, what you might do, and give you some inspiration. So yeah, I hope that was helpful. I may end up doing that test again soon, just for fun. and just to have a look and see. I think it's probably going to be the same. I did it twice before. I was thinking that, you know, your personality can change throughout different decades. As you're younger, you're more gung-ho and brave and cavalier, and then as you get into your 30s and your family and your 40s, your middle age, you may have different preferences or characteristics. So I was curious of whether any of those areas, the 4 letters, represent obviously different parts of your personality. So one of them might change. I don't think the core one would change, like introvert or extrovert, but I think some of the other ones could throughout different decades. That's why, the only reason why I might do it again. But yeah, definitely an interesting one. It gives you percentages of each, you know, what percentage in each area that you are, and then there are some variants at the end, like the -T on mine for turbulence, which means I can be changed. I'm very I suppose reliable, but I can be turbulent in my thoughts and wanting to explore and get into different areas and really question things a lot. I think that's what the turbulent part means. Really question norms. So, but you know, to me that's interesting and that's good. So yeah, I think I'm going to wrap it up there. Go and watch a movie or something with the family, and we're thinking about watching the original Ghostbusters with Bill Murray back in the 80s. I know the new one's out at the moment, so we're thinking of checking that out tonight on this Saturday night. I hope you have something fun planned as well yourself, and hope you enjoyed the video. So I think that's it for this Saturday. We're going to wrap it up, but please do let me know how those things went for you, and if you found out anything interesting, you know, give me a shout. I'd be interested to hear how it went for you. So for this live Saturday night, thanks for joining, really appreciate it. I'll see you again next time. Take care. Good night.